An arson attack at 3 a.m., 22 lives trapped in flames. A multi-million-dollar takeover plot targeting a homeless widow. The channel The Dog and the Veteran is a storytelling platform created for entertainment, inspiration, education, and the promotion of positive emotional values. All stories presented on this channel are fictional and are creatively developed based on themes such as courage, loyalty, resilience, and the special bond between veterans and their dogs. The content does not represent real individuals, actual events, or documented cases. Any resemblance to real people, animals, or events is purely coincidental. William Wynne. In the Navy SEAL teams, they don't just teach you how to shoot. They teach you how to listen to the silence. Because silence isn't always peace. Most of the time, it's a tactical gap. Avoid waiting for a predator to fill it. I've spent half my life in that silence, waiting for the air to change. Narrator. At 75 years old, Martha Bell believed her greatest struggle was the biting frost of the Colorado winters and the thinning of her own bones. She was wrong. She was standing on 20 acres of pristine mountain ridge, worth more than a small country's treasury. In the cold, calculating eyes of Wes Harlan and his developers, Martha wasn't a pillar of the community. She was a line item on a spreadsheet, a barricade, an obstacle. Narrator. They didn't come with hammers. They came with a red stamp legal notice and 30 days of cold, hard ultimatums. 30 days to betray the only living souls who still looked at her with love. They expected her to break like dry kindling. They didn't count on the shadow watching from the tree lean. William, I saw the way they looked at her, like wolves eyeing old doe. I've seen that look in Kabul. I've seen it in Ramadi. It's the look of a predator that thinks it's already won. But they made a fatal error in their reconnaissance. They didn't see me, and they definitely didn't see the black and 10 storms sitting at my feet. The war for this ridge begins now. If this story is already pulling you in, hit follow and drop a like. More parts coming fast. William. A dog like Smoky doesn't track like a house pet. He tracks like a biological weapon. He feels the vibration of the earth before I do. When his ears pin back and his tail goes rigid, it's not a warning. It's a statement of fact. The enemy is near. Narrator. The harassment didn't stay on paper for long. It crawled into the yard under the cover of the mountain mist. A cut fence here. A tainted water trough there. Subtle acts of psychological attrition designed to make Martha feel senile, helpless, and alone. William. This isn't the work of city inspectors. This is a siege. They want her to wake up to a yard full of sick animals. They want to crush her spirit by hurting the things she protects. Narrator. Martha didn't know that every night a ghost in a tactical jacket was sanitizing her perimeter. She didn't see William when discovering the blue lace meat hidden in the snow, tactical-grade toxins meant to silence the pack. William. Sleep tight, Martha. The perimeter is secure. I've spent 20 years running counterinsurgency against monsters. These suits and their black SUVs, they have no idea what kind of hell they just invited onto this mountain. Narrator. 3 o'clock hours. The hour of the wolf. The cowards finally realized that paperwork and poison weren't enough. They decided to use the oldest weapon known to man, fire. William. I heard the shatter glass first, then the whoosh of the accelerant catching. Contact. Front left flank. Smoky move. Narrator. Through the searing orange heat and the choking black smoke, William Wynne didn't wait for a fire truck that would never arrive in time. He didn't think about his own safety. His training, The years of muscle memory forged in fire took over. William. The roof was groaning, a sound like a dying beast. I saw Blue, Martha's oldest retriever, pinned under a burning beam. The smoke was a wall. But Smoky didn't hesitate. He dove into the flames like he was born from them. You wanted to burn her out? You just lit a fuse you can't extinguish. You thought she was an easy target. But now you're going to find out what happens when you corner a man who has nothing left to lose but his honor. William. In the teams, we have a saying, 90% of the victory is claimed before the first shot is fired. It's called intelligence. Without it, you're just a man with a gun walking into a trap. Narrator. While the town gossiped about the unfortunate fire, William Wynne was hunkered down in a ghillie suit on the northern ridge. He wasn't mourning. He was documenting. William. Smoky and I stayed ghost quiet for 48 hours. No fire. No movement. I watched the black SUVs come and go like clockwork. I mapped their frequency, identified their faces, and found the cracks in their armor. Narrator. They thought Martha Bell was a weak link in a property chain. They didn't realize they were under a microscopic lens. William. Wes Harlan thinks he's a master of the universe, but from where I'm sitting, he's just a target with a high-definition silhouette. I'm building a dossier that will burn his kingdom to the ground, and he doesn't even know I'm here. Narrator. Day 20. The tension on the mountain was thick enough to choke on. 2 unmarked trucks breached the front gate, tires spitting gravel. This time, they didn't bring documents. They brought bolt cutters, canisters of chemicals, and the stench of arrogance. William. I signaled Smoky. Wait. I wanted them deep inside the kill zone. The area where every single movement was being recorded by my high-def trail cams. I wanted their intent to be undeniable. Narrator. As they moved toward the surviving pens, the air suddenly went cold. The mountain wind seemed to hold its breath. William. Now. Smoky flank. Narrator. The intruders expected a frightened widow. Instead, they were met by a 50-year-old wall of muscle with eyes like cold emeralds and a K9 that moved like a streak of lightning. William. You're on private property. Drop the gear and lace your fingers behind your head. Don't look at your belt. If you reach, my dog won't wait for my command. You came here to bully a woman. Now you're going to answer to the man who guards her. William. You can hide a gunman in a forest, and you can hide a bribe in a handshake. But in a digital world, you can't hide the heartbeat of $1 million wire transfer. Every cent leaves a trail of breadcrumbs for someone who knows how to hunt. Narrator. While the intruders were being processed by the state police, William was in Martha's kitchen, lit by the pale glow of a tactical laptop. He wasn't just looking at land records. He was peeling back the layers of a corporate conspiracy. William. It wasn't just a resort. It was a shell game. Harlan was using 3 separate holding companies to hide his monopoly on the ridge. The noise complaints were signed by his own employees. The county inspector was on his secret payroll. Narrator. Martha sat across from him, her hands trembling as the truth unfolded. She wasn't a nuisance. She was the keystone holding back a billionaire's ego. William. I told her, Martha, they didn't pick on you because you're weak. They picked on you because you're the only thing they can't buy. But they forgot one thing: honor isn't for sale. And I have plenty of it to go around. Narrator: the sound of luxury helicopter blades cutting the mountain air was the sound of a predator realizing its trap had been turned inside out. Wes Harlan didn't like losing. He came to the ridge to personally extinguish the resistance. William: he stepped off that chopper in a suit that cost more than Martha's barn. He looked at the mud and the dogs with such disgust it made my blood boil. I didn't say a word. I just stood there with Smoky at my side, a silent wall of salt and pepper. Narrator: Harlan tried to talk about progress and eminent domain. William just held up a single tablet screen. William: I told him, your cousin in the planning office just got picked up by the feds. Your offshore wire transfers are currently being reviewed by naval intelligence. You have one choice: sign this non-harassment agreement and fund the reconstruction of every building you burned, or spend the next 20 years in a concrete box. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I've ever heard on this mountain. William: victory is a hollow word if you don't build something in ruins. I've spent 20 years tearing things down in the name of freedom. It was time I finally built something that mattered. Narrator: the war was over, but the sanctuary was a scar on the hillside. William Wynne didn't pack his bags. He traded his ghillie suit for a tool belt and his binoculars for a hammer. William: I realized that watching Smoky interact with these broken dogs was doing something to me, something the VA could never do. The silence wasn't a tactical gap anymore. It was peace. I wasn't just guarding Martha's land. I was guarding my own soul. Narrator: Hollow Creek began to transform. It wasn't just a shelter for dogs. It became a sanctuary for the men who had forgotten how to live outside of a war zone. William: we started bringing in the brothers I'd served with, men who were drowning in the quiet of civilian life. We gave them a hammer, a dog, and a mission, because a warrior without a mission is just a ghost waiting to vanish. William: they say home is where you're from, but I think home is a place you're willing to die for. For Martha, it was this ridge. For me, it became these dogs. Narrator: Martha Bell lived to see her dream become a fortress of compassion. She saw the new barn rise from the ashes, and she saw the first class of veterans graduate with their K9 partners. When she finally passed, she did so knowing her legacy was in the hands of a man who understood the value of a sentinel. William: I'm 50 now. My joints ache when the snow rolls in, and Smoky moves a little slower than he used to. But we're still here. The billionaires still circle like vultures. But they know now. They know this mountain is guarded by a bond forged in fire and a code that never expires. William: in the end, we are all just stewards of the land and the lives we touch. My name is William Wynne. I was a SEAL, a warrior, and a hunter. But here, I am just a man with a dog and a mission. Narrator: as the sun sets over the San Juan peaks, casting long, golden shadows over the thriving sanctuary, the message is clear. Justice isn't always found in a courtroom. Sometimes it's found on a frozen ridge, defended by a man and a dog who refuse to walk away. William: Smoky and I will be here as long as there's a lost soul out there in the cold. This fire will continue to burn. We hold our ground. We protect our flock. Forever and ever. William, a wolf doesn't always come with fangs. Sometimes it comes with a briefcase and a stack of city ordinances. In the SEALs, we call it death by 1,000 cuts. It's the kind of warfare where you don't even know you're bleeding until you can't stand up. Narrator: Wes Harlan was gone, but the vacuum he left was filled by something even more cold-blooded. Corporate lawyers and bought and paid for bureaucrats. They realized they couldn't burn Martha out, so they decided to bankrupt her with red tape. William: zoning violations, environmental impact fees, sudden safety inspections that happen at 2 in the morning. They thought if they piled enough paperwork on a 75-year-old woman, she'd sign the deed just to make the headache stop. But they forgot about the community. They forgot that when you try to extinguish a lighthouse, you only make the darkness more obvious to everyone else. William: a warrior without a war is a dangerous thing. We spend decades being sharpened into weapons. Then society drops us back into a world that doesn't know how to handle the edge. We don't need sympathy. We need a mission. Narrator: William's call to his old unit wasn't just about labor. It was about brotherhood. When the first convoy of veterans rolled into Hollow Creek, the atmosphere on the mountain shifted. It wasn't a rescue mission anymore. It was an occupation of hope. William: I saw men who hadn't slept through the night in years finally close their eyes because a rescue dog was leaning against their shins. Smoky took point, of course. He wasn't just a dog to them. He was a mirror. He showed them that even after you've been trained to bite, you can still learn how to heal. We weren't just building barns. We were rebuilding men. William: on the ridge, Mother Nature is the ultimate commander. She doesn't take bribes. And she doesn't care about your legal notices. When the barometer drops 10 points in an hour, you either prepare to fight or you prepare to die. Narrator: Day 45. The blizzard was a white wall of fury that cut Hollow Creek off from the power grid and the outside world. The temperature dropped to 30 below. William: I tied a 50-foot nylon line between the house and the barn. Without it, you'd be lost in 10 steps. Smoky and I spent 12 hours in that whiteout, carrying the weak and the old dogs through drifts that reached my chest. Every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. But that's the code. No one gets left in the cold. Not on my watch. William: the best time to kill a target is when they're exhausted from a victory. After the storm, we were bone-tired. That's when Harlan's cleaner made his move. Professional. Silent. He didn't come to talk. He came to sabotage the main fuel lines and leave us freezing in the dark. Narrator: Smoky didn't bark. He just gave the silent alert, a low vibration in his chest that William felt through his palm. William: we moved through the fresh powder like shadows. I didn't want a police report. I wanted a confession. We tracked him to the generator shed. He thought he was a ghost, until a 30 kilograms K9 pinned him to the ice, and I was whispering in his ear. I showed him that the mountain has eyes, and those eyes never sleep. William: in asymmetric warfare, you don't trade blows with a giant. You find the giant's heartbeat and you stop it. Harlan thought his money made him untouchable. He didn't realize that in the age of information, Secrets are the most volatile explosives on Earth. Narrator. William didn't just capture a saboteur. He captured a digital treasure trove. Using the encrypted phone found on the intruder, William and his old contacts in naval intelligence bypassed Harlan's firewalls. William. We didn't just find the arson plans. We found the bribes, the offshore accounts, the blueprints for an airport that violated a dozen federal laws. We didn't leak it to the local rag. We sent it to every major network at once. By the time the sun rose, Wes Harlan wasn't a developer anymore. He was a fugitive. William. Healing isn't a straight line. It's a zigzag through minefields of memory. But a dog is an anchor. They don't care about what you did in the desert. They only care that you're here now, and you have a hand to pet them. Narrator. The Hollow Creek Integration Program became a beacon. Veterans from across the country started arriving, not just to help, but to find themselves. William. I watched a former sniper, a man who hadn't spoken more than 10 words a day, start talking to a one-eared pit bull mix like it was his best friend. That's the magic of this place. The dogs think they're being rescued, but really, they're the ones doing the saving. Smoky just watches it all like a proud sergeant major. William. There's a language of the pack that you can't learn in a book. It's in the flick of an ear, the shift of weight, the long, steady gaze. If you listen closely enough, they'll tell you exactly who they are and who you need to be. Narrator. With over 50 rescues now under their wing, the sanctuary had become a thriving ecosystem. Martha Bell sat on the porch every evening, watching the veterans and the dogs move in a choreographed dance of mutual recovery. William. She told me once that the mountain felt different now, less lonely, like the ridge was finally breathing again. I realized then that we hadn't just saved a shelter. We had created a heartbeat. Narrator. Time is the one enemy no SEAL can defeat. 3 years after the first fire, Martha Bell's time on the ridge came to a gentle, quiet end. William. She died in the room where she was born, looking out at the barn we rebuilt together. She left me a final instruction. Don't let the fire go out. The funeral was a sea of flannel, tactical gear, and wagging tails. 50 veterans stood on that ridge in a silent salute. It was the loudest silence I've ever heard. I looked at Smoky, his muzzle graying now, and I knew the watch had officially passed to us. William. A warrior's legacy isn't written in his own deeds, but in the deeds of the people he trains to take his place. I'm 50 now. I've still got the edge, but I can see the next generation coming up behind me. Narrator. Elias, a young Marine who had arrived at Hollow Creek in pieces, had become William's right hand. He had the eyes of a hunter, but the heart of a guardian. William. I watched Elias handle a new, terrified rescue. He didn't use force. He used presence. He used the silence. I knew then that Martha's dream would outlive us all. Smoky and I were the old guard now, and our job is to make sure the new guard is ready for the storms to come. William. They'll tell stories about what happened on this ridge. They'll talk about the SEAL and the K9 who held the line against a billionaire. But the real story isn't the fight. It's the peace that followed. Narrator. As the sun dips behind Colorado peaks, The sanctuary lights flicker on, a warm, amber glow against the cold blue of the mountains. Hollow Creek is no longer a target. It is a fortress of the soul. William. My name is William Wynne. I was a weapon of war, but here I am a builder of peace. Smoky, and I still walk the perimeter every night, not because we have to, but because we promised. As long as there is a soul in the cold, we will be the ones who bring them in. The watch is eternal. The pack is family. And on this mountain, we never, ever quit. William. A man like Wes Harlan doesn't just vanish because he's behind bars. Power is like a virus. Even in isolation, it mutates. From his cell, he didn't want to land anymore. He wanted something much more dangerous. He wanted my head, and he wanted Hollow Creek to burn as a message. Narrator. Year 5 of the Sanctuary. The peace was shattered not by fire, but by a professional hit squad, mercenaries hired through the dark web using Harlan's remaining offshore millions. William. I felt the change in the air at 1 o'clock hours. Smoky didn't just alert me. He led me to the armory. This wasn't a corporate sabotage anymore. This was a direct action. They thought they were hitting a dog shelter. They forgot they were jumping into a hornet's nest of retired Tier 1 operators. William. In the dark, we have the advantage. We own the night. We've spent our lives in the shadows of the world's worst places. To these mercs, this was a paycheck. To us, this was our home. Narrator. The mountainside became a tactical nightmare for the invaders. William and his veteran team didn't use flashy movements. They used the terrain, the silence, and the dogs as eyes and ears. William. We didn't fire a shot for the first 20 minutes. We just let them feel the woods closing in. Smoky moved like a phantom, flanking their point man. By the time they realized they were the ones being hunted, the exit was already sealed. You don't bring a knife to a gunfight, and you certainly don't bring greed to a mountain guarded by honor. William. Every soldier knows the cost of the line. Sometimes the price of peace is paid in blood. That night, Smoky took a round meant for me. I've seen brothers fall in combat, but seeing that black and tan frame hit the snow, it felt like the mountain itself had cracked. Narrator. The attack was repelled, but the victory was silent. In the dim light of the emergency clinic, the roles were reversed. The man who saved the dog was now begging the universe for a miracle. William. I sat on that cold floor for 10 hours, my hands covered in his blood. I told him, not yet, partner. The watch isn't over. That night, I realized Smoky wasn't just my dog. He was the keeper of my humanity. If he went, I was afraid the monster I used to be would come back for good. Narrator. The failed assassination attempt backfired on Harlan's remaining allies. The story of a Navy SEAL fighting a mercenary army to protect a dog sanctuary went global. It wasn't just a local news story anymore. It became a movement. William. Suddenly, we weren't just Hollow Creek. We were the Sentinel Network. Veterans from the UK, Australia, and Canada started reaching out. They wanted to build their own ridges. They wanted their own Smokies. I realized that Martha's 20 acres were just the first domino. William. We started the Smoky Protocol, a global standard for tactical K9 therapy. We weren't just saving dogs. We were building an international brotherhood of guardians. William, information is a weapon, but the law is a shield. We didn't just want Harlan in jail. We wanted his entire foundation dismantled and its assets seized for public good. Narrator, with the evidence from the hit squad's capture, the federal government launched a full-scale RICO seizure. Every cent Harlan had stolen or bribed was redirected. William, we watched the news as his private jets and skyscrapers were auctioned off. The proceeds didn't go to the state. They went to a national trust for veteran mental health and animal rescue. We turned the predator's hoard into a fountain for the thirsty. That's the ultimate counterstrike. William, time is a relentless tracker. You can't outrun it, and you can't hide from it. My salt and pepper hair is more salt than pepper now. Smoky. He doesn't climb the ridge anymore. He stays by the fire. His eyes still sharp, but his body weary from years of the watch. Narrator, 10 years after the first notice was served. William is now a legend in the veteran community, but the physical toll of his life is catching up. William, I look at my hand, scarred, stiff, but still strong enough to hold a leash. I realized that my mission was shifting. I wasn't the lead scout anymore. I was the elder, the one who had to make sure the stories were told so the fire would never go out. William, Hollow Creek isn't just a place anymore. It's an idea, and ideas are bulletproof. You can kill a man, and you can kill a dog, but you can't kill the truth that they stood for. Narrator, the sanctuary had expanded into a massive campus, a state-of-the-art facility where the world's top trainers and therapists came to learn. William, I walked through the new dorms and saw a young veteran, fresh from the desert, laughing as a pup chewed on his boot. That pup is the great-grandson of one of the dogs we saved from the fire. The circle was complete. The ridge wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was a cradle. William, there's a specific kind of quiet that comes when a warrior knows his mission is done. Smoky didn't suffer. He just looked at me one evening, his tail giving one last, weak wag, and he let go. He died on the porch, looking out at the mountain he had guarded for a decade. Narrator, the mountain felt empty for a long time after that. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't the tactical gap William used to fear. It was a silence of respect. William, I buried him next to Martha. I didn't put a fancy headstone. I just put his tactical collar and a sign that said, "The First Sentinel." I cried that day, not because he was gone, but because I was so damn lucky to have walked the line with him. William, Elias is older now. He has his own scars and his own K9, a fierce shepherd named Win My Honor. I stood on the ridge and watched him lead a morning patrol. He's better than I ever was. He is the heart of the mountain. Narrator, William, when officially retired as director, he moved into a small cabin on the far edge of the property, finally allowing himself the peace he had fought so hard to earn. William, I spend my days carving wooden dogs for the kids who visit the sanctuary. I'm not the commander anymore. I'm just the old man on the hill. But every now and then, I see a black SUV on the lower road, and my hand still reaches for a radio that isn't there. Old habits die hard. William, they asked me if it was worth it. The fire, the blood, the years of looking over my shoulder. I just look at the ridge. I look at the 100 veterans who now have a reason to live, and the 1,000 dogs that have a warm bed. Narrator. The camera pulls back far above the Colorado peaks. The lights of Hollow Creek shine like a constellation against the dark wilderness, a permanent scar of goodness on a harsh world. William. The watch never truly ends. It just changes hands. My name is William Wynne. I was a weapon of war, but I became a guardian of life. Smoky is gone, but his spirit is in every bark that echoes through these pines. We held the line. We protected the pack. And as long as the stars shine over this ridge, the sentinel will be here. I am William Wynne, and my watch is done.